Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Productivity for Perfectionists. 2 weeks to transform your procrastination into progress, your overwhelm into clarity, and your endless to-dos into getting it done. I'm your host, Deborah Hurwitz, and today I'm here with a returning goddess, Kerri Hummingbird. Hello, Kerri. Lovely to see you.
Oh, I'm so glad to be here, Deborah. And for everybody out there, blessings to you today.
I love the butterflies behind you, and the serenity
I
is
do
so
too.
awesome. Let's
It's a
share.
reminder.
Yeah, it's just serenity, serenity. We're going to talk about all the ways that serenity has been eluding lots of us in just a moment. But let me share with the kids who you are. Kerri Hummingbird, soul guide and host of Soul Nectar Show, which I was a guest on, yay, is the #1 international bestselling author of The Second Wave, Transcending the Human Drama. Wouldn't we all like to do that? An Amazon international bestseller for over 2.5 years. Ms. Hummingbird inspires people to lead their lives wide awake with an authenticity, passion, and purpose that positively impacts others. That pretty much sounds like the perfect, complete picture for all of our struggling, locked up, procrastinating perfectionists. So I'm really glad you're here with us today. I want to start with a piece of your background that I find particularly fascinating, and then we can just leapfrog over to current day and maybe see what we can sandwich in the middle. But your background as incredibly just fluid and right-brained and goddessy mystically oriented that you are now, you come from a really decidedly left brain engineering technical writing background. And I would love for you to just share with our very left brain perfectionists, including the artists and people who are like right brain dominant in their lives, but who are bugged by that. Perfectionism is all that lower left brain. It's all that feeling about like past and future and what's wrong and how do I fix it. And I need the grid and I need the structure and I need to feel like everything is okay before I start anything. Right. And you know that kind of functioning, you know that kind of structure and attention to detail and fixie energy. Can you tell us a little bit about how you moved from that into what you're doing without dying from anxiety attacks?
Well, it's been a journey. I mean, you can
Yeah.
see my teeth. You see like this? There's like
Yeah.
a That's because of grinding my teeth.
Wow.
That's stress. That's like years and years of like grinding my teeth at night and so super stressed out because I wasn't showing up perfectly for everything and doing it all right. And I was getting criticism or feedback. And
Mm,
that is just, I wanted to avoid that at all costs. But
right.
yeah, and so like when you're, especially as a woman in a male dominated field, as software technology was back, 25 years ago, however long ago that was, because I'm
Right.
dating myself. I'm 52 now, so I was doing that when I was 22. I started and I did it
You
for
look
20
amazing.
years. Well,
Yeah.
thank you. And
Wow.
so, yeah, 20 years I worked in a male dominated field where I actually had encounters where like an engineer from India, for example, I had to get information from him in order to complete my assignments. And he looked at me and he said, women can't possibly understand this. They're not intelligent enough, and we're not going to waste my time talking to you about it.
Oh, wow.
I'm, and by the way, I'm a Smith College graduate, so I'm an Ivy League school graduate from a women's college.
Wow.
So that was very shocking, and so I had some really big training that first career on how to I felt like I had to prove myself. And I see a lot of
Mhm.
women getting into this trap of like,
Right.
I've got to like get my certifications, my three little letters after my name. And then by the time their name appears, it's got like dozens of three little letters. And you don't even know what all those mean, but they mean something really important. And it's
Right.
like, because this is how I prove I'm worth it. This is how I
That's
prove
right.
you should listen to me. So I had a psychological break. I would say like 10 years ago, I had this psychological break in all areas of my life. It was like I lived with somebody who was nitpicky, 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 who like would just poke, 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 kind of like a gnat. Like, have you ever had a gnat in your ear and it keeps buzzing like near your ear and you try
Yeah.
to swat it away, but you can't get it because it's too tiny and it just
Yeah.
keeps doing, and then it comes over here and you think you got rid of it, but then it comes back. And that was my relationship for 20 years.
Wow. Wow.
I
Oh,
called to me someone who would constantly be picking at me. And it
mhm.
was the same thing I was getting in the technical field, because in the technical field, I was working on the most challenging subject matter, which is writing API references, application programming references for programmers. So that means you cannot make a mistake. You have to be very precise. It all has to
Mhm.
be totally accurate.
Yeah.
And so I was like, super into my analytical brain and
Yes.
just double checking, triple checking, quadruple checking everything. And because of my insecurities around being in a male dominated field, I wanted to deliver the first draft perfectly, just so I could kind
Mm.
of be like, haha, screw you, you'll find nothing wrong with it. So I cultivated this sort of energy around myself of like, I'm never wrong. And I
Oh.
married somebody who was also never wrong. So between the two of us, it was like 20 years of I'm never wrong. But like, it was just a
And I just
nightmare.
want to notice before you go on, because this is so, I mean, you really got yourself into quite a pickle, right? But I want to notice, like, yes, you were in a field where, in an objective, not that we can ever truly get objective, we won't get into that whole conversation right now, but insofar as we can agree on facts like the grass is green and the sky is blue, that type of objectivity, you were in an objectively precise and demanding field. Like you were writing API scripts or whatever it was for engineers. You were delivering to an audience that expected a level of precision, a level of high attention to detail, right? And so you could have just said, like, I had to, they needed, but what you're clearly acknowledging, and this is why you're an expert on the summit right now, is you're acknowledging it wasn't just that it was high attention to detail and a certain kind of requirement. You're not hiding behind that, like, well, it had to be that way. It couldn't be any other way, which is what we as perfectionists do. We have that unassailable narrative. What was really going on was you also had the very subjective and wounded components of, I'm in a male dominated world. I've been hurt. I've been denied. I've been dismissed. I have to prove myself. There was that extra emotional charge, not this line of code needs to be right, but I have to prove myself. And therefore I have made the decision, not someone else said, but I made the decision consciously or unconsciously, I'm not going to do a rough first draft of anything. The first draft of everything will be perfection. I will never be wrong. I am never wrong. And we get into that rigid, controlling, highly fearful and contracted place that ironically is so brittle that a lot more shit is likely to break and go wrong than if we're relaxed and actually showing up present, right? And so you're breaking down what I call the unassailable narrative. You're like, well, here are the objective facts of the matter. Here was the field. Here were the job expectations. Here were the types of work product I needed to deliver. And then on top of that, I added my need to control, my fear, my desire to prove, my statement, I'll never be wrong. And that's something that's so important for us to separate out, to see what's the actual requirement or commitment here versus what am I telling myself? What's the unassailable narrative? What impossible standard am I building up and saying that's part of what is inherently or objectively so. So I really appreciate you making that distinction. Please go on. So 20
Yeah,
years of nobody's wrong.
nobody's wrong. And that's exhausting because proving things is really challenging. And when you live your life proving things, you're pretty much exhausted all the time. It's not fun, you
When
know?
you live your
It,
life proving things, you're exhausted all the
it
time. It's
sucks.
so true.
So, and I started like questioning it pretty early on. I was questioning even though I was going along with it. So as I has kind of, I think all of us have these, if we have this perfectionist tendency, we probably also have this other side. So there's like this idea of, and it's, the book is Undefended Love, and I I'm trying to remember the name of the author, but the book is Undefended Love. Talks about the compensatory identity, which is the perfectionist identity that's trying to like be perfect all the time. And
Mm.
what it's covering up is the wounded self that thinks I'm not good enough, I'm not worthy, I'm not smart enough, they're not going to like me, nothing I do is right. And so this compensates for all those wounded beliefs. It goes right over the top and it's like it just locks it in. So at the same time as I was like perfect out in the world everywhere, I was like privately struggling at home. I was struggling in my relationship. I was struggling inside myself. I didn't know how to ask for what I needed. I didn't know
Mm.
how to express myself. And I was in psychotherapy. So I was in psychotherapy the entire time I was married to my father of my children. So weekly
Wow.
psychotherapy, I would go in there and just, be a total victim and whine and complain and cry about my life and just feel helpless to do anything about it and just feel so awful. And then I would head out into the world and be perfect.
Mm.
I had all
Mm.
the answers.
Yes. So interesting. I'm curious about this. This is actually a question I have for myself. So what you just described, and I really get it, and I know that people in our audience are going to be able to get it too, right? What you said was, I didn't know how to ask for help, and yet I was a total victim. and I would go out into the world and be perfect. So I love, first of all, the compensatory identity and the way it just fits on top, right? It's like, yeah, it's like, here are all the terrible things I think about myself, and here are all the ways I'm going to be not that, right? I had a friend once talk about how like online dating profiles are actually the worst things to try to
It's
make sense
terrible.
of, because people will put out there what they wish they were and what they absolutely don't believe they are, but wish they were, right? And so you get that like compensatory
Yeah, I
identity,
dated,
and
I dealt with
underneath
that.
all
After
that.
my marriage, I dealt with that too. But so here's
But so here's my question, right? Is so
yeah.
we're perfect out there, and I was the mistress of this, right? This is where I came into my coaching business, was realizing I was absolutely burned out on pretending, of like holding up the world, everything's amazing, especially in show business, right? Everything's amazing. I just did this super cool
Here's
gig,
my
and
selfie.
the gig was a nightmare, and I didn't get paid enough, and I'm exhausted, and now I've got nothing, whatever, right? But everything's amazing, but inside, sold out, empty, shut down, whatever it is. What you're talking about is almost a different triangulation that I'm curious about, because we do know the lone wolf thing. I'm in control. Only I can do it. Only I can do it right. So I don't ask for help, or I don't know how to ask for help. If I ask for help, there's a problem, right? But what you also said was, I was also a victim. I would go and whine and be a victim and complain, right? And so how do we, what's going on there when it's like, I can't ask for help and it's all up to me, but I'm also a total victim? What's
Well, there's
happening
one
there?
word that describes the entire syndrome, and it's called martyrdom.
Yes.
Okay, so and that's a word that's so heavy, people go, "Oh."
Right.
So I want to just clean that up. I just want to like take a big squeegee and just go selenite, selenite squeegee, selenite. It's all good. We're just squeegeeing that.
Selenite?
Selenite is a crystal. It's a beautiful cleansing crystal. And so we're just going to like raise the vibration here and just clear everything up, because
Fantastic.
basically many of us who feel called in our hearts to be in service, or called in our hearts to lead, or called in our hearts to bring a message out, that is an authentic call. That's a real thing that's happening, and it's from your soul, and it's
Mm.
totally authentic. What happens is that it gets distorted by our wounding. It gets distorted by those early traumas that we experience in our lives, or even past lives, if you believe in that, which I totally have had direct experience of. So I really do. I realize how much they can impact us.
Yeah.
And so, now we're healing all of these unhealed places within ourselves. And so it's sort of tangling up with our true, clear, golden
Mm.
line direct purpose from our soul. So it
Golden
all
line,
just
direct purpose
gets
from our soul. I love that.
it
Yeah.
just gets all
Mhm.
tangly. So that ends up being martyrdom. Because what is martyrdom? Martyrdom says, I'm here to sacrifice myself for the good of all, and I don't need any help to do it. And that's a lie.
Oh
That's
my
a
God.
total lie. I do need help to do it. Like,
But what you just said actually is so genius, because the turn, no, I love this so much. I'm here to totally self-sacrifice, serve others. It's like a self-immolation, and I don't need any help to do it. Now, of course, what you're saying is I don't need any help to, like, it's the lone wolf cry. I don't need any help to live this purpose. But what you actually said, the way you said it, is so great. It's such a great push at martyrdom, because it's like, that's the truth, is we don't need any help to self-immolate. We don't need any help to self-sacrifice. We don't need any help to let our wounds get tangled up in the golden thread of our soul and just absolutely destroy ourselves and turn ourselves into complete useless, helpless victims. We don't need any help doing that at all. In fact, when other people try to help, we're like, no, thank you. I've got it. I'm self-immolating just fine. Thanks.
well, because what happens, Deborah, I just want to speak from the heart on this, because I understand this so much. If you've ever been to a networking group with women,
Yes.
especially a wellness oriented one,
Oh, yeah.
there's always somebody ready to pounce, usually multiple people, on how to fix your problem. So,
Yes.
like, you show up with your open, vulnerable heart, and you're just sharing, hey, this is what's going on for me right now. And they sit back and they sort of go, oh, I have a solution for that. Oh, this is what you need to do. Oh, this is what I helped myself with. Oh, that, and so it
Yes.
becomes dangerous actually to open up with other women and say, hey, this is what I'm going through right now,
Mm.
because we have so much need to be better
Be
than
right, to prove, to fix, to change, to solve, right?
and
So
to
it,
help.
Yes.
twist
And
it
to
all up
help.
inside that.
Exactly. Exactly. Thank you so much for pointing that out, because that's also something that in terms of our, like, we're talking about, these transformations, procrastination to progress, overwhelm into clarity. And some of I knew that you were going to be the overwhelm into clarity piece. Like, here we are in overwhelm into clarity, right? But to really pull apart these threads of why do I feel like this when this is also true? And I really love what you're talking about of like, here's the golden line, soul calling. That's authentic. That's true. But it gets gunged up in all of these woundings. And the example that you just gave of this networking piece is so great, right? Because it's like, if I'm in a wounded place, if I'm in a locked up, fearful, I have to prove myself. I have to be right. I'm never wrong. My first draft of anything is gold, right? If I'm in that place of needing to prove, then I'm going to jump all over your problem to fix it, because that's going to make me feel better and has nothing to do with you and your well-being. If I'm actually at peace with myself, if what I'm really up to in that moment is being present to what's going on with you, if what I'm really up to in that moment is the service of being with what's going on with you, the very first step always is to just accept that that is so before I go in to try and fix it and change it. And that's uncomfortable for us as perfectionists when we haven't been able to be present to that within ourselves. It's really hard to be with other people's uncomfortable, unpleasant, icky emotions when we ourselves are not able to be present to those emotions in ourselves. And so we're like, no, let's not have that terrible thing. Let's fix that. Then you can be better and I can have done a good thing. And then
And I
nobody has
cannot
to
be
deal with the icky
uncomfortable.
stuff. Yeah. And we
Yeah.
can all just not be uncomfortable. We'll just like fix the problem and I'll be great and you'll be fine. And then we can be done.
I mean,
And we
that's
bring that to,
basically it.
yeah. And we bring that to
So
everything.
we have to be able to face our own shadows, which is why I do shadow work. I mean,
Yeah.
so my shadow work began 10 years ago when I left my marriage, and I, of course, thought that I was leaving it because a knight in shining armor was going to come around the corner any second now and rescue me from my terrible marriage before, and of course, honor me just the way I was.
Mhm.
And, and that didn't happen. I mean, it did, kind of.
Yeah.
My soul came, you know,
Right.
knocking. Hey,
Thank you.
Kerri, I
Hey.
have to talk to you now. And I got into this spiritual group. I started learning earth-based spirituality, turning into my senses, and learning about the four agreements and by Don Miguel Ruiz and all of these beautiful teachings, and started immediately. My soul gave me an assignment, said, okay, you're going to write a book and
Yeah.
you're going to very vulnerably share all the messy details of your of your healing process
Yeah.
and however long it takes. And the title is Awakening to Me, One Woman's Journey to Self-Love.
Amazing. Okay, wait, pause. We're going to get back to that in a second, but you just dropped a whole lot of wisdom there that I just want to make sure that people who have not heard of the four agreements, Miguel Ruiz, he has a middle name, Miguel what?
Don Miguel
Don
Ruiz.
Miguel Ruiz, thank you. Great book, The Four Agreements. Go get it. It's like a way of just kind of being a human being that works in relationship with yourself and in relationship with other humans, kind of a recipe for happiness type of thing, right? But you got to be willing to be uncomfortable and face truths and things like that. Four Agreements is a great book. And when you talk about earth-based spirituality, turning into the senses, so some people call this embodiment. Some people who are specializing in women will call this, like my friend Liana Silver calls it, feminine genius or feminine embodiment, right? Tuning into our senses and our bodies. I talk about body wisdom. I talk about mind-body connection. So for our perfectionist audience, whatever your spiritual views are, whatever your views are on Mama Earth or your body, let's just say it starts with remembering that you exist below the neck.
Exactly. And for me, it helped me because I learned how to use a drum, like a shamanic drum,
Ooh,
to
nice.
quiet my mind, to go on what they call a drum journey. Because my
Ooh,
mind was always like this, busy, busy, like a rock concert going on in my brain. And the soul speaks to us quietly. So if we can't
mm,
get quiet, we can't hear what's going on. And
that's so
that's
interesting. The
that's what
soul
I was
speaks to us
experiencing.
quietly. That's what yoga is for me. It keeps my busy brain focused on like the right form and the exhale, inhale, and my warrior
Yeah.
three is just so, and my alignment and my shoulders and my hips, and my busy brain is worrying about like perfect form. And so that I can actually be in the practice of yoga, which is just fucking breathing. Right?
It's actually just breathe. Well, it's breathing and movement. Yeah.
Right, is right. But like the practice of breathing. There was a yoga
Yeah.
master that was like lying in a hospital after some injury, was like barely breathing, and somebody barely moving. And somebody said, how is it not to be practicing yoga while you're recovering? He's like, I'm practicing yoga lying in this bed. It's the practice of breathing, being present to the breath.
I
I was
love
just like,
that.
ooh, yeah, that's good. But I love the soul speaks to us quietly busy, loud voices, inner critic, right? Like when it comes to procrastination, let's speak to procrastination in progress for 1 second from this point, because I think it's actually really beautiful what you're saying. Lots of times when we're procrastinating, we have a lot of self-talk, a lot of busy chatter about how it has to be, what we're worried about, what we need to get lined up first, like the certifications piece, right? It's like, oh, I need to do these 3 courses before I can write anything in my journal, right? I need to, right? It's like, I need to do X before I can do Y, or I'm not in the mood, or I don't feel good, or what if it's not good enough? All these things that are the loud chatter of procrastination. And when you talk about, I'm sure people will be more interested in finding out more about shamanic drum journey. I'm interested in that too. Like, what are the practices that can actually allow us to hear through or underneath the busy chatter, or quiet the chatter, so that we can hear that still small voice? I call it the ding of truth, right? Or the nudge of intuition, like the yes rather than the no. The soul speaks to us quietly, that golden thread. All those things are like the good stuff. That's what will bring us to progress, motion, action, right? But we need to get past the chatter first. I think it's such a nice distinction. The soul speaks to us quietly. Thank you for that. Okay, keep going.
Yeah. Well, you know, when we enter the mystery, mystery schools are all about entering the mystery of the planet of the divine, and
Mhm.
the realization that life is bringing us everything we need through what's happening in our day, like the synchronistic things that are happening, the messages, the conversations, the experiences, the whatever it is, has gold inside of it for you when you actually embrace it. So, my soul asking me, "Hey, write this book." You're going to know when you're finished because I'm going to tell you. And until then, you just assume you keep going. I tried to end that book 5 times. I was like,
Wow.
"Okay, I'm there. I love myself." And then the very
Okay, I
next
remember.
week, some other thing would happen and I would get sucked back into my pattern at a different level, and I would come through it quicker, right? Because every time you go through the pattern, you go through it quicker. And I would go, "Oh my gosh, that goes in the book. Okay, I'm not done." And then I would bring myself to task. So
Mm.
there's two things going on. One thing is to realize that you already are in the mystery. When you go to a mystery school, like I teach a mystery school, when you go to a mystery school, you're knowingly entering into that mystery with the divine. You're knowingly saying, "Okay, I admit that life is teaching me all the time." And you just
Mm.
go into a conscious recognition of that in the school. But that actually happens all the time, whether you're in a mystery school or not. It's just that we acknowledge it. Okay. So,
I love just the statement, life is
I
bringing
mean,
us everything we need in what's happening in our day. Like, there's
exactly
my whole
all
nervous
the
system just
time.
sort of like ratcheted down to a place of like peace and acceptance just in that. Just
You
like,
don't have to figure
whatever's
it
already
out.
happening, right? There's nothing to figure out. There's nothing to figure out. Whatever's already happening is giving you everything that you need in order to take
Yes,
whatever your next step is.
exactly. So it's that recognition. So that's recognition number one. And then because then you shift from figuring it out to watching.
Mm.
Okay.
Being
Like,
the observer of our emotions, and specifically our emotions, but being the observer of whatever's happening can be so powerful, because then it takes us out of that unassailable narrative place of like, oh, I'm overwhelmed. It's all I can't, it must,
that's
right?
just a
And
story.
yeah, it's a story. It's a bunch of judgments. It's separation, right? It's like the ego piece that's like, oh, I need to have it figured out and I need to get it right and I need to be mad about stuff, right? Like,
And
instead, it's
the,
here I am, present.
Because when you're in the ego part, I mean, listen, people, I'm an expert in this because I did it for 20 years on a couch. Okay. So I'm a good storyteller. So I'm really versed in how the brain, the egoic system, protects itself
Yes.
from perceived harm
Yes.
in unexpected circumstances by telling narratives. And usually those narratives involve blaming others, which is where the victimization comes from. This happened because you did this to me, kind of stuff. Like, that's all part of this egoic protection system. So
Hmm.
when we're figuring it out, we're actually fully immersed in that protection system and we're letting it spin stories, that keep us from the very thing that would cause that pattern to stop happening, which is self introspection.
Hmm. Keeps us
And
from looking within, it keeps us running away from what we think is a monster, which is actually like a really scared, lonely, heartbroken 5-year-old
little
that just
child that
needs a
just needs
hug.
love.
Just needs a hug. Yeah. Keeps us
Yeah.
running in the other direction, keeps us from the very thing that would actually help, which is turning towards that wounded piece, that those uncomfortable emotions that we're afraid to feel. I'd rather fix your problem than be with my own uncomfortable emotions, right? Yeah,
Yeah. And so
totally.
this leads beautifully to the next piece,
Hmm.
which is accepting the soul guidance as it comes up.
Okay.
So my
Please
soul's
tell us how to
guidance
do that.
was, you're going to write this book and you're going to transparently, vulnerably share all the things that happen and all the realizations that come to you as you're going on this intention journey towards loving yourself. You're just going to you're going to tell all, and you're going to do it from love, and you're going to do it until I tell you to stop. Okay. So like I said, I tried to end the book 5 times. I'm like, okay, I'm there. And then my soul said, not exactly. Here's another piece, you know? And so then I got
Wow.
the next layer and the next layer. And my soul did tell me when it was time to stop. And I actually had 1 week to finish the book before I had to publish it, and I didn't even know why. I did as instructed. The book, the very next day was the deadline for a book competition that I entered, and I won best in category. So
Amazing.
these are
Wow.
things that, like, I didn't like plot and plan to enter this thing. I didn't even know about it. So
Wow.
this is the goal. We slip into the soul's curriculum and into the soul's flow.
I love
We
Soul's
actually
curriculum. That's juicy. That's really juicy.
we open up so much more. So if you see yourself as a leader, as a guide, as a healer, as like, I'm here to save the world, we don't save the world by telling others how to do it. That never works. Because what's the first thing people
Gems.
do is go, screw you. I don't need your version. That we don't tell people how to do anything. We show, we demonstrate, we
It's
be.
genius. We don't save the world by telling other people how to do it. So, and yet
That's like
I'm
Chicken
laughing so
Little.
hard
I
because you
mean,
are nailing it in terms of what we actually say to ourselves on the inside, right? If this person would just cooperate with my agenda and my, if this person, if that,
I
this,
could fix
if
them
the
so
world,
good with my
I,
medicine if they just
I
come
could
along.
fix them so good. Oh my God, totally hilarious. That's so hilarious. Kerri, we have to stop. We're over time,
Oh
but
man, it's too
we,
bad because we
I
had so much
know.
more to talk about. Well, how'd you come on another show? How'd you come back
We
on?
yes, well, we'll come on to another show. We do have so much more to talk about, and I know that we're just piquing people's curiosity and interest. I'll tell you what. Let's just complete with one thing, because I did say we would come to the present moment, and there was something you were saying just before we started to record that I really do want to capture. That so obviously we've been in crazy end times now for a couple of years with the pandemic. At the time of this recording, things are still in flux around the world. There's still travel issues and educational issues and all sorts of stuff. And you and I were just talking about how, like, big changes in business, things that were working like gangbusters last year are not working, and that sort of thing. And you had some really thoughtful things to say about that. So for those of us who are in a place of pivoting and adjusting and feeling kind of like, what the hell's going on? What can we share with them?
Yeah, absolutely. So we're in the time of the Great Awakening, and you can see it because it started in 2020. It actually started in 2020, 2012, but
Mm.
we saw it really like big time 2020. Like, whoa, there's a larger force. Okay, that force is now taking us through a series of transitions in our behaviors, our patterns, the ways we do things. We've done things up to now, and we're shifting and changing that. And so this year is 2022 is a year of um, big changes. So the emblem for this year in Chinese astrology is the water tiger. And so if you think about a water tiger, this tiger's like over here and over here and so if you feel like thrown about this year, like you thought it was this and then it went like this, you're in the energy. So the place of strength is the undefended heart. The place of strength is to take the lessons that life is giving you. It's bitter medicine sometimes, but it's powerful medicine. And if you can take that medicine with grace and take it in, it's going to strengthen and fortify you to be the leader that you were meant to be in this lifetime.
Mm.
That's what you're here to do. You're not here to put an image of being the great leader. You're here to actually be the great leader. And the way to do that is to take that medicine and say thank you. And
Mm.
the more you can come into the center point, That's going to take a spiritual practice, and it takes devotion to bring yourself to the center when there's wild swings way over here and wild swings way over there. We don't shut out the light and we don't shut out the shadow. We arms are, like you were saying, arms around everything going on inside, like arms totally around the whole thing, and bringing it all into the center place. That's
Yeah.
that's the
Yeah.
work of 2022. And those of us who have been, maybe you've had a big spiritual practice for yourself to practice bringing it to the center, you're going to get refined in that skill all year
Yeah.
long. So just keep coming back and noticing the inner narcissist that wants everything to be perfect on the outside to prove that you're worthy. Just keep coming back in and going, I'm worthy no matter what. I'm worthy even if I have egg on my face, even if I have boogers on my face, even if I just like took a piss and I didn't mean to. Like, it doesn't matter.
Yes. And
Whatever.
thank
You
you.
laughed too hard, so it's okay.
Thank you. That's a beautiful place to close. And I just want to like pile on with that. No, it really is, because a place of strength is the undefended heart. I really, again, that's sort of like a nervous system ratchet down for me. And I really appreciate you saying the inner narcissist and I'm worthy no matter what, because we're not talking, when we say undefended heart, we don't mean no boundaries. Like with perfectionists, we sometimes have, the people pleaser, like you said, the self-sacrificing, the martyr, where we pile on, we create that overwhelm and that too much, the endless to-dos, all of that, because it's like, I have to, and I can't not. And we're allowing people to take advantage of us, or we're taking on more and more commitments because we're trying to prove our worth or adding more things to we're not talking, when we say undefended heart, we're not talking about undefended life or calendar or personal boundaries.
No,
We're
you need to
talking
have good
about
boundaries.
undefended heart within, right? The inner narcissist, the one that says, no, you have to keep doing more and keep saying yes and keep criticizing and keep finding shit to fix, right? Like, no, actually just keep coming back to the place of, like you said, I'm worthy no matter what. I'm worthy if there's a booger on my face. Now I'm like, do I have a booger on my face? I'm worthy, right? I'm worthy if I just took a piss. I'm worth, right? Like that piece of just continuing. Because I'm still mastering just even what self-love means. For me, it's I'm learning how to be friends with myself. Like friends with myself, the way I would be friend to someone I love and admire and appreciate and want in my life and want to feel good around me. Friends to that, right?
And as we
Friends
do
like
that,
that.
Deborah, as we come in and we befriend ourselves, like you were saying, and we really honor and love and cherish all the aspects of ourselves, and we hold ourselves that way, we don't have quite so many distractions or unnecessary things on the outside that need firm boundaries, because everything goes into alignment, and that's the
Mm,
power place. That's why I was talking about the center point.
yeah.
So I love
Love it.
everything you just said. Oh my gosh, this conversation, I could have,
We're
can
going
we
to come
just have
back to
2 more
your
hours?
podcast.
Maybe
We'll
we,
do,
maybe
we'll
we
do
could do an event, like we'll do like a workshop or
Yeah,
something. I don't know.
absolutely. Absolutely. All right. You people, you guys are going to want a lot more of Kerri. I know it's all below. Free gift. Get on her list, do her programs, do all the things. Kerri, it's so great to have you back. Really, really great to have you back. I love this, melding of like the spiritual and practical and really going way into the woo and also into that deeply practical modes of healing and doing. It's so helpful. So I know this has been really helpful for our audience today. All right, you guys, this has been Kerri Hummingbird. I'm your host, Deborah Hurwitz, and come back for our next episode of Productivity for Perfectionists. We'll talk to you soon. Bye.